I want to talk about insider selling at GameStop. And so GameStop saw a ridiculous run-up in its stock price earlier this year by speculators. And a lot of hedge funds are going belly up. And you know what this is? That's the world's smallest violin. And some of these hedge funds going belly up, I don't mind because some of them are corrupt. I won't mention which ones. But what's happened is because GameStop, ticker GME, because GameStop's stock ran up so much, the company GameStop sold $550 million worth of shares. And it's the right call as well. Why am I bringing this up? I'm bringing this up because what I want you to be aware of and to do research on when you look at stocks is insider buying and selling. And I'll give you an example. So I worked in the hedge fund industry for ages. And one of my favorite investments on the long and short side was Activision, ticker ATVI. And right here is a picture of the wonderful founder. I'm smiling because he always cracks me up every time I meet him, Bobby Kotick. And so you have to look at behavioral finance when it comes to investing. Because whenever Bobby Kotick, for the most part, the founder of Activision, CEO, whenever he buys in size Activision shares, ticker ATVI, the stock usually goes up a lot within the next 12 months. And whenever he sells a lot of the stock, ticker ATVI, what happens is the stock usually goes down a year or so later. And I remember I'm smiling because I met with him once. I had a one-on-one with him in a hotel when I worked in the hedge fund industry. And I asked him, I said, Bobby, how should investors think about you selling a lot of shares? And he looked at me and he said, well, I have a wife who has expensive tastes. What am I supposed to do? It's kind of funny. But you got to look for that always. Big insider buying or selling. Let me give you a little bit more context now. So there's this brilliant man named Richard Fuller. And he created, along with his partner, Fuller and Taylor, which is a great mutual fund here in the Bay Area. And one of my best friends growing up, David Potter, works there. Now, Dick Fuller won a Nobel Prize in finance for behavioral finance. Okay, and so what they do is a lot of the best investors, they look at, how they look at insiders buying and selling, right? It's usually an indication, or can be, of what's to come, right? People are pretty logical when it comes to their wallets, especially managers at big companies. And so this is Peter Lynch here. Peter Lynch wrote this great book called One Up on Wall Street. And I bring up Peter Lynch because he ran one of the best mutual funds in history for ages, for more than 10 years, called the Magellan Fund. And he worked at Fidelity in Boston, a big mutual fund company. And he did exceptionally well, partially because he looked at insider buying and insider selling. So please check out this book as well. And then please be mindful of insider buying and selling. So how do you do it? How do you track this stuff? Well, you look for what's called a Form 4. Now, big companies have to file whenever there's a big change in financials. Okay, so whenever they release earnings quarterly, they file what's called a 10Q on sec.gov. A 10Q is a quarterly financial statement. It talks about their earnings and all that stuff on a quarterly basis. They also file a 10K, which is the annual report, and they issue 8Ks, which are important press releases. But a form that's overlooked is the Form 4. And the Form 4 will tell you of massive insider buying or selling. So here's an example. Let's look at a Form 4 together. This one here is a Form 4 for Elon Musk selling Tesla shares. And you can see the date there is February 14th of 2020. Pardon me, he was buying Tesla shares. And this is really important because this was the mother of all signals to buy Tesla. He didn't just buy a couple shares, okay? He bought a ton. And you can see he's the CEO here. And they have to put in certain X's to let you know if they own more than 10% of a company or if they're a director. Now let's look at the bottom of this, the bottom left-hand corner. So what happened was Elon Musk sold stock, common stock. And when you and I invest in stocks, it's called common stock. Okay. And so he sold this on February 14th. How much? Wait for it. He sold he bought, my goodness, the older I get, the better I was. He bought 13,037 shares, And you can tell he bought because you got the letter A beside the number of shares there. A means acquired. D means dispose, meaning sell. A means he bought. And he bought it at a price of $767. Right now the stock split. It's a hell of a lot higher now than it was there. And look at the number of, look how much he bought. $34 million worth. That's a great indication how confident this CEO, for example, feels about his business. Now, before wrapping up this session, I want to talk about one other type of insider selling, which you should be careful of, because a Form 4 means you sell a massive amount. But there's something called a Form 10b-5. Okay, a 10b5-1 means planned sales. And I have a picture of one of my business heroes, Mark Benioff, here, because since Salesforce went public in 2004, he's been selling a little bit of shares every now and then in a plan called a 10b5-1. Not a massive amount, just little bits every now and then, which is the right call because 99.9% of his net worth is in Salesforce, and he has to diversify. So the bottom line is, when you see a Form 4 and massive insider buying and selling, that could indicate the direction of the stock in the future, because management votes for their wallets. However, if you see a 10b5-1, quite often it just means planned selling, and it's not an indication to run for the exit and sell the stock.